We are ready to start with our second session, so can you please be seated? And before we start, I would like to make an announcement. We will have some panelists that they will be speaking in Greek. So if you haven't been provided with a headset for the translation, please, you will find them right outside the entrance. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your coffee break. You took a lot of pictures. Please remember to use the hashtag Rhodes to Peace when you upload something on your social media. I think we're ready to begin with our second session with the title, Cities as a Hub of Innovation and Social Inclusion. Using sports as a tool towards a more inclusive society is a key pillar for generating positive and social change for a better future, for future generations. For this reason, I would like to call up on stage Mr. Edin Koljenovic, head of Montenegro Regional Youth Cooperation Office, to moderate our second session for the day. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I would like to say that I'm really honored to be here today with you. It is my personal honor, but also professional, since I work for one newly established regional organization, which is called Regional Youth Cooperation Office, which is founded by the 6 governments in the Western Balkan region to work on promoting peace and reconciliation in the Western Balkan region as a post-conflict area. This is why I'm very happy to be here today and to have this opportunity to discuss important issues with you. Today's session will be dedicated to promoting great achievements and results that have achieved our distinguished panelists that will join me in a few minutes, but as well to try to answer some concrete questions and to promote how actually sport can be used in innovative ways to promote social good, but also to try to involve you and all stakeholders coming from different positions, different backgrounds, athletes, sport bodies, governments and international organizations. What can we all do to maximize actually the use of sport for social inclusion in communities? This is why I have the honor to invite our distinguished panelists to join me to this panel. First of all, I would like to invite Ms. Athina Zerva, head coach of the Greek national deaf women basketball team. Please, Athina, join us, join the floor. Today here with us is as well Mr. Kashif Siddiqi, the founder of the Football for Peace and Champion for Peace, a former football player. Please, Ms. Siddiqi, join us at the floor. I would like to call as well Mr. Petros Kokkalis, Hope Refugee Football Club president and the founder of this club. Please, the floor is yours. And Ms. Rimla Akhtar, the chair of the Muslim Women Sport Foundation. Welcome to the floor. So all of you are pretty much recognized in your field of work and have a lot of achievements done in the previous year and work. It would be really good to share this, your experience, but also challenges, and really your stories are inspiring for the future actions that we can do. Ms. Zerva is the person who led the Greek national deaf women basketball team at the top of the world 2 years ago, bringing to limelight a version of the sport that the average fan knew little about. Her consistent efforts to bring attention to the issues of young people with disabilities were fruitful after the victory in the World Championship and her meeting with the Greek president, who then promised to create more incentives for people with disabilities to participate in sport. Ms. Athina, please, the floor is yours.
Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Είναι τιμή και χαρά μεγάλη να βρίσκομαι σήμερα εδώ και να μοιραστώ τις εμπειρίες μου στην Εθνική Ομάδα Κοφών Γυναικών. Πρόκειται για ένα παραμύθι αθλητικό, μια μικρή σταχτοπούτα του αθλητισμού, η οποία πραγματικά αναδύθηκε από πολλές δυσκολίες, από την αφάνεια, από την άγνοια των ανθρώπων ότι καν υπήρχαν αυτά τα παιδιά. Και σήμερα είμαι πολύ περήφανη να μιλήσω για αυτά τα παιδιά και για τα κατορθώματα που κυρίως εκείνα φέραν στην Ελλάδα, διότι θεωρώ ότι οι προπονητές δείχνουν έναν δρόμο, αλλά οι αθλητές είναι αυτοί οι οποίοι... Οι αθλητές είναι εκείνοι οι οποίοι κουβαλάνε το μήνυμα και το πηγαίνουν παραπέρα. Στην ομάδα μας είναι γυναίκες, βαρύκοες ή κοφές. Κάποια παιδιά μιλάνε, κάποια δεν μιλάνε, κάποια μιλάνε λίγο. Είναι δηλαδή ένα σύνολο από παιδιά τα οποία όταν πήγα στην ομάδα μου ήταν δύσκολο να συνεννοηθώ. Μόνον εγώ, γιατί εκείνα μεταξύ τους συνεννοούνταν μέσω της νοηματικής. Το πρώτο σοκ ήταν πώς θα μπορέσω να ανταποκριθώ και να κάνουμε μια προπόνηση η οποία θα είναι αξιοπρεπής, γρήγορη και αποτελεσματική. Και γρήγορα καταλάβαμε ότι εκείνο που παίζει μεγάλο ρόλο σε όλη αυτή την προσπάθεια, το οποίο σαν κανόνα το ακολουθήσαμε μετά, ήταν ότι μπορούμε να συνεννοούμαστε και με το βλέμμα. Πέραν από τη γλώσσα του μπάσκετ, που έχει τα δικά της χαρακτηριστικά, πέρα από τα σήματα που κάνουμε στο μπάσκετ, υπάρχει και η γλώσσα του βλέμματος. Και πέρα από τη νοηματική, την οποία έμαθα και είμαι πολύ χαρούμενη, γιατί μπόρεσα και συνεννοήθηκα σε προσωπικό κυρίως επίπεδο με τα παιδιά. Η ομάδα λοιπόν αυτή ξεκίνησε το 2011 με μένα στον πάγκο, με μεγάλη απογοήτευση στην πλάτη της, προσπαθούσε να κάνει πράγματα, ήταν πάντα λίγο κάτω από το βάθρο, τέταρτη, πέμπτη, με μεγάλη δίψα. Βρήκα μια ομάδα που ακόμα και η σχέση τους δεν ήταν στο καλύτερο επίπεδο και αρχίσαμε να βάζουμε τα πράγματα σε μια σειρά. Πρώτα απ' όλα φτιάξαμε ένα όραμα. Είπαμε τι θέλουμε να κάνουμε όλοι μαζί εδώ. Να παίξουμε μπάσκετ, να του ευχαριστηθούμε, να τιμήσουμε τα εθνικά χρώματα και να νιώσουν τα παιδιά ότι είναι χρήσιμα και μπορούν πραγματικά να τα καταφέρουν. Μετά από πολλούς σκόπους, βάσανα, δυσκολίες, γιατί πετύχαμε και τις οικονομικές γενικότερα δυσκολίες του περιβάλλον μας, αυτή η ομάδα έκανε κάτι σπουδαίο. Έπεσε πάρα πολλές φορές και συνήθως έπεφτε, αποτυχίες, τραυματισμοί, αλλά και καλά πράγματα, εγκυμοσύνες. Στο τέλος όμως δεν το έβαλε κάτω. Ήταν εκεί κάθε φορά και πάλευε για να κάνει αυτό που είχε συμφωνήσει. Εγώ με τους συνεργάτες μου έκανα μία άλλη συμφωνία για να μπορέσω να ανταποκριθώ πιο εύκολα και πιο γρήγορα σε αυτό που είχα απέναντί μου. Είπα ότι δεν θα προπονήσω κοφές γυναίκες, αλλά θα προπονήσω αθλητές. Και αμέσως λυθήκανε πάρα πολλά προβλήματα, γιατί εκείνο που δεν κάναμε ποτέ είναι να τις λυπηθούμε. Με την έννοια, μήπως δεν μπορείς να το κάνεις καλά αυτό, να σου δώσω άλλο ένα περιθώριο. Είχαμε βαριά ευθύνη να εξηγούμε, να δείχνουμε, να καταλαβαίνουν τι λέμε και μετά να το ζητάμε πίσω. Και όταν δεν κάναν κάτι καλά τα παιδιά, η ευθύνη ήταν δικιά μας. Κλείνοντας, θέλω να σας πω ότι η ομάδα κατέκτησε το 2016 το χρυσό μετάλλιο στη Θεσσαλονίκη σε αγώνες Ευρωπαϊκού Πρωταθλήματος Σκοφών και ένα χρόνο μετά, το 2017, έκανε το απίθανο και το αδιανόητο, κατέκτησε το χρυσό μετάλλιο στους Ολυμπιακούς Αγώνες Σκοφών στη Σαμσούντα. Έχω να πω μόνο ένα πράγμα. Πέρα από την εμπειρία που έχουμε ζήσει, είμαι τόσο περήφανη, γιατί σαν προπονητής και σαν δάσκαλος είναι πάρα πολύ δυνατά τα συναισθήματά μου, γιατί μπόρεσα και πήρα μέσα από τα χαμόγελα των παιδιών και την ικανοποίησή τους τη δουλειά που έκανα χρόνια ολόκληρα και την πήρα πίσω. Σας ευχαριστώ.
Thank you very much, Ms. Zerva, for this, I would say, emotional, not presentation, but as well testimony of your experience, which is quite inspiring to hear. But today with us is as well Mr. Siddiqi, who is a former professional football player, which brings him from the field, from the sport, but also who is now currently very involved in using the sport in promoting peace. He's a former international football player. Mr. Siddiqi founded the Football for Peace with the aim of using sport as a diplomatic tool. One of the recent events was that he organized by his foundation a football match at the top of the Mount of Kilimanjaro to promote gender equality, which sounds quite impressive. So, Mr. Siddiqi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And again, President Joel Bouzou, for all the support he's given us to be where we are. Yeah, so I guess thank you for the kind introduction. I co-founded actually Football for Peace, and ironically it was co-founded at the Peace and Sport Forum in 2013 by the support of the current president, and our co-founder is the FIFA legend, Elias Figueroa, and he is also a champion for peace. And it's amazing how peace and sport brought two champions together to bring a vision from myself. My mother was born in Africa, she faced a lot of conflict, and Elias, who's a FIFA legend, who's Chile's 100 greatest players of all time. And Peace and Sport, as a neutral organization, brought two athletes from complete different walks of life, ages, genders, faiths, to create something. And today we've become a diplomatic football movement, which is using soft power and football diplomacy to try and unite communities in such divided times that we're living in. And it's interesting on the panel because it's based around innovation of cities. And one of the key concepts of Football for Peace is to use cities around the world which are divided and look to break them up and bring youth from different walks of life, different faiths and cultures, together to educate them on why they should be working together. The programs are actually 60% education and 40% football, because from my own background growing up as a footballer, one thing that we realize is that we're colorblind. It doesn't matter which color someone is or for what faith they come from, and sport gives us that tool. Unfortunately, in society today, in the world that we're facing, is we don't actually realize that, and our youth are definitely a threat to the problems that they see on TV, some of the media things that are happening, with conflicts around the world. So I think innovative examples, especially in cities, are very, very important. I guess one of the key things that I like to express when I talk about Football for Peace is that football is the world's biggest game. And you look at the UK on its own, and the Premier League is now the world's biggest league. The Championship is the second biggest league in the world, and that's the second league. And that kind of shows the power of just English football and what it can promote. And I think, there's a real opportunity here to use football as a tool to try and bring those communities together and change mindsets that we're facing in the international markets today. And if you think about it, 3 billion people understand football, from toddlers to Usain Bolt to royal family members, tribes in the Amazon. For example, you mentioned the peace match we did at Mount Kilimanjaro. We did a peace match on Easter Island in 2013 with the Rapa Nui tribes, and there's only 3,000 people on the island, and they still walk around naked, but they have conflict. But they understood football, and football was a tool that brought these people together. And to just come back to your point on the match that we did in Mount Kilimanjaro, we brought 30 females from around the world, from war-torn regions, with a organization called Equal Playing Field, and we supported them by putting on a match that would harness the power of football and raise awareness. Aside from the Cities for Peace programs, we run these peace matches, which are hosted outside iconic locations and parliaments, to really foster capacity building and development and raise awareness for sports diplomacy and football diplomacy, and use that as a harness to try and bring royal family members, diplomats, footballers from different faiths, walks of life, which could work together to raise awareness. And I think the power of, if you look at the Champions for Peace that Peace and Sport have, and they've given us a voice, and these peace matches are an opportunity to harness that voice on a global stage by bringing different leaders and actors around the world. But yeah, it's, I guess that's kind of my background and some of the contribution that we're trying to give to society today when we have a huge threat, whether it's far-right extremism, you look at the Islamic fundamentalist situation that we face as well, and I think sport has got a very, very key role to play, and that's on extremism on all fronts, you know, not just on what we see today.
Thank you, Kashif, for your presentation. You mentioned soft diplomacy. This is something which is very important in your work, but we'll have a time to discuss this and to explain us a bit more how you work it. But before that, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Petros Kokkalis, who is a Greek businessman. He was the vice president of the Greek football club Olympiakos, and currently the vice president of Kokkalis Foundation. He actually is the one who founded the Hope Refugee Football Club, a club managing a football team comprised of refugees, asylum seekers, living in Athens Greens, with an aim to foster their integration within society. Mr. Kokkalis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Amin. Good morning from me. Thank you for inviting me, and congratulations for the forum. I think Kashif did a fantastic job explaining what we all understand, that football is a common language. And in my capacity as the Vice Mayor of the city of Piraeus, we faced a novel situation in 2015. Oh, thank you. When the migration flow via Greece was stopped on the northern borders, and we had about 70,000 people stranded in Greece. So this was the first time that the Greek state created refugee hospitality centers, refugee camps, and we had to face integrating a new population. As organization Earth, which is an NGO focusing on sustainable development, we worked in the emergency situation, providing food and assistance during the time that people were stranded in the port of Piraeus. And once we moved into the situation where people were moved safely into accommodation, into safe camps, there was an issue of integration. So as we all understand the common language of football, there are not too many common languages. I mean, among all these populations, it's food, football, and music, basically. So coming from football, I worked with the municipality, and we provided a field for Hope Refugee, which was made possible with the help from UEFA. But the general idea, and I think the innovation as a city, was the idea that we don't want to go into the camp and provide coaches and football pitches and so on and so forth. We want we want to give the opportunity to refugees to interact with the host population, and more important, and also very importantly, we want to give opportunities for the host population to interact with the refugees. So we launched Hope Refugee, which was made possible with the support of UEFA. I think why football is very obvious. It's a common language. And the idea here is that we advertised in all 9 refugee camps that exist in the greater Athens area. And we made public trials and picked players. And we now have, we had more 150 players come out and play from 18 countries. And it's not only for them a very big opportunity to come out from the refugee camp and interact. The thing is that we play with Greek teams. So having played 70 games, it means that we had the opportunity for about 1,000 Greek players to play with refugees. 1,000 Greek players come from 1,000 Greek families. It is not very often that refugees have the opportunity to interact with a host population on an equal level, because football, besides a common language, is an equality language. In the field, you are the same like everybody else. And we are very proud that our players are trained, dressed, equipped, and play like everybody else. So this was something that all our players and the Greek players enjoyed very much. We try to provide what the normal team provides to its players, which means professional counseling, legal support, and we try to provide language learning and assistance in relocation and other refugee assistance issues. Like any club, we also operate academies. We started out in the camps, and slowly as the camps became more organized, we started playing in asphalt, in a cement pitch, but camps became more organized, and now we're very happy to work with the Barcelona Foundation under the grant of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation in 2 camps providing training for kids. So we have run about 12 children programs in different camps all over Greece, a lot of kids, and more importantly, we have girls teams. We have unaccompanied children. We have programs for unaccompanied children which stay in different host areas in Athens. And this is also very important to try to get the kids out from the camp and play with Greek teams. They enjoyed it very much, and you can understand why. Through this program, we have we work with 45 people have the opportunity to be employed and work as coaches, assistants, and so on and so forth. 20 of them are refugees, and basically most of our head coach is a refugee. And a lot of these players want to become professional players in Greece, which is not a very lucrative profession at this moment of Greek football, but nevertheless, it's a job. So now the minister has resolved the issue of the problem of getting permits to play as professional players. It was an issue with the FA card, the blue card. A lot of volunteers. A lot of publicity, which is important. It's important to provide the media and the public with an image of a refugee, not as a person in need, in despair, in clothes, on a boat, but as a football player, a familiar and recognizable image. So Greek and international media helped us a lot in producing this, in coming up with this image. We had a lot of partners. We worked with UNICEF, with the Yuri Jorkaev Foundation, setting up the unaccompanied minors programs. Like I said before, we're very happy and learning enormously by being subcontractors to the Barcelona Foundation, UEFA Foundation. Olympiakos provides us pitches for the trials and also tickets. And I have to say here also that the Super League of Greece and AEK and Tripoli and PAOK and Xanthi has invited our players to go and watch the matches, and the kids as well. So this is an opportunity again to come out from the camps and be part of what happens in the rest of the Greek society. And generally, we try to provide hope for refugees. We have people coming in the games and watching them. And I would just like to steal a moment and recognize our captain, Reza, who's here watching, and Katerina and Elias, who are the team managers. Elia and Katerina, if you want to stand up. So we just had our trials, and we're starting a new season next week, I think. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kokkalis, for your, I would say, impressive work that you do here in Greece, and quite inspiring as well. I would like now to give the floor to Ms. Rimla Akhtar, also I would say my personal impression from her biography, very impressive woman that actually works as well as a businesswoman but also as a sports administrator. She was the first person who publicly identified herself as Asian Muslim woman on the Football Association Council. She has spoken many times on the need for sports to adapt to accommodate Muslim athletes, and she's part of the Forbes Influential Woman in Sports Global list and won Sport Woman of the Year award in 2013. So welcome to the floor. We are lucky to have you here.
Thank you very much, Edin. I'd like to start actually by providing a bit of context before we talk a bit further in the panel. And I'd like to do that by reflecting on my own personal journey through sport and why sport is so important to me, and therefore what we do as the organizations. I wear, people say I wear a number of hats. It's a phrase. I wear a number of hijabs, I always say. But in terms of the organizations, there's a number of organizations with which I work, and there's a reason that I do the work that I do. So when I do reflect on my journey in sport so far, my journey in life, I would say it's been one of working towards inclusion. It's not a coincidence that I've ended up working in the space that I've worked in, even though I didn't plan it at all. But I would say it's also been a journey towards acceptance. So I was born in the 80s in the UK, and for anyone who knew that time in the UK, it was a particularly difficult time for people like me because it was a very, sort of the height of racism, you could say. So my family and I had to deal with a lot of issues as a result of that. And as a young child in those formative years, trying to really understand people's perceptions of you and how people judged you, it was really difficult in those years. But I was lucky, and I am lucky, in that I have two older brothers who protected me like only older brothers do. And they're also the reason that I got into sport. So I'm the youngest of three, the only girl. It was bound to happen. So if they were playing football, I'd play with them, cricket, etc. But it was interesting for me that I found this space where nobody seemed to care about the color of my skin. Nobody seemed to care about the fact that I'm a girl. Nobody seemed to care about this piece of cloth that I wear around my head. All they cared about was my ability on the pitch. I was accepted. And that's a feeling that I carried with me throughout my life, to the woman that you see sitting here in front of you right now, and the confidence that I developed as a result of that, feeling a part of a community. And sport for me is really, really interesting in terms of personal development as well as societal development. So if you think about team sports, for example, you've got a situation where you plan with everyone in mind, you learn what it means to communicate well, you know each other's strengths and weaknesses, you do your best to play to everyone's strengths, you see the leaders and the followers emerge sort of naturally. And then you play individual sports, and in individual sports, it's all you on that field of play. Nobody's there to cover your weaknesses with their strengths. It's all you, your vulnerabilities. You learn what it is to accept yourself as a whole. And if, like me, you played both individual sports and team sports, you actually learn a lot about how you push your own boundaries, but also the boundaries of everyone around you. And that, for me, is about community. Community at local, regional, national, international level. It is about pushing each other to be the best that you can be. It is about raising each other. It is about knowing that individualism is a great thing and every individual has something to contribute, but actually the team piece is the main piece when everyone comes together. And all of that, once more, for me, comes back down to ambition. So how far are we all as individuals willing to push our own ambition? Is it about what we want in our lives, or do we push that ambition to include more people within that? And for me, my journey around ambition, and my ambition was to use sport as a tool for progression, for peace, for solidarity, for respect. All those great values, sport for development, for me, is what it all became about. And it became about that with the Muslim Women's Sport Foundation initially, not as a player, because I joined as a player, but actually when I became chair of the Muslim Women's Sport Foundation. I wanted to turn sport from this sort of space where it was a very white, middle class, very exclusive space, to one that looked more like this, more vibrant, more dynamic, diverse, inclusive. Now, the foundation itself began with the two teams that you see on the left, top left and the bottom right. The other two are me playing football. I don't know why I put those in there. They're embarrassing as it is. But the other two pictures are from the British Muslim women's teams that competed internationally at various tournaments. And I captained the British Muslim women's futsal team internationally at a number of tournaments. And it was an amazing experience. My teammates, my coach trusted me to lead for the first time in my life. But the true leadership for me, like I say, began when I became chair of the Muslim Women's Sport Foundation. And it's also where my sort of diplomacy side began as well. Because on the one side, we had the community, and dealing with the Muslim community, you know, it's an absolutely diverse range of people of all sorts of backgrounds. It's not a mono group, a monoculture in any way, shape, or form. All sorts of opinions, all sorts of ways of being. And then on the other side, we have the sports industry. And there was this sort of work that we had to do to bring everyone together, to give people the opportunity to be a part of the sports industry and feel those great things that I felt and others felt growing up playing sport. So on the one side, as I say, we had the community. Now, I just love this picture, so I had to use it, forgive the indulgence. But this is taken from the film Bend It Like Beckham, and I'm not sure how many people here have watched Bend It Like Beckham. But this is the sort of feeling. So the vast majority of the community, like my parents, like my family, were very supportive of what I did and really encouraged me to take part in sport. But we did have these odd people in the community that were like, what are you doing, kind of thing. This isn't normal, that's not the norm. It's, you know, I'm not sure about what my girls are going to be doing, etc. But just like Jessie, who's the main character in the film, won over her family and they accepted her participation in football, we were able to work with the community and bring them on that journey with us. And then on the other side, we had, like I say, the sports industry, who were a very exclusive space, very rigid in terms of how they did things. And we had to say to them, you know, this is how we do things. We set the agenda. We drive the agenda in this space. Join us on that journey. And they did as well. So it was a real movement, really, from both sides to bring those two sides together to make good things happen. So why is inclusion important? Social inclusion, inclusion on any level. Why is it important? Well, for me, it's important because of girls like this. So these are girls that I worked with in Jordan in March, actually, with Equal Playing Field. I went out to Jordan to set another world record for the lowest ever altitude game to be played under the auspices and support of His Royal Highness Prince Ali of Jordan. These girls would not have had an opportunity to do what they're doing if it hadn't been for inclusion. For our idea and our aim to get women and girls of all backgrounds participating in sport so that they can feel special. Because the truth of the matter is this, someone who feels inadequate in life in general can come onto a sports pitch and suddenly feel like they have something to give. They have something to give to their team. They have something to give themselves. And that field of play that we have, the physical field of play, whether it's football or any other sport, they carry those metaphorically throughout their lives. They create their own fields of play. They raise themselves up through sport. And that, for me, is why sport's a powerful tool, like I say, around peace, solidarity, respect, all these wonderful values that we can carry in our own fields of play in life. And I just feel really blessed to be able to be working in this space.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your sharing of your experience as well. Now I will ask some question in regard of what you have already said. Ms. Zerva, you mentioned, and I read this very interesting phenomenon of chain of people, which is very symbolical to me, and I think it's important. It could be transmitted to other places as well. What does it actually mean? And since we are talking about cities as hubs, as enabling environment, how did you use this actually symbol to create this relation with your city, which is empowering your work as well?
Είναι πραγματικότητα και έχει άμεση σχέση με το θέμα που συζητάμε σήμερα εδώ. Η ομάδα μας από το 2013 πήγε για πρώτη φορά στο Βόλο, φιλοξενήθηκε με την πρωτοβουλία λίγων ανθρώπων για να μπορέσει να κάνει μεγάλα στάδια της προετοιμασίας της για την Ολυμπιάδα του 2013 στη Σόφια. Θυμάμαι στην αρχή υπήρχε μία κυρία, κυρίως, η οποία δίπλα της είχε κάποιους ανθρώπους, η οποία έφτανε να μας φέρνει και μαγειρεμένο φαγητό για να τρώνε τα παιδιά. Αυτό σιγά σιγά άρχισε να απλώνεται και χρόνο με το χρόνο μπλέχτηκαν πάρα πολλοί φορείς. Μπλέχτηκε ο Δήμος, η Περιφέρεια. Ήρθαν άνθρωποι από μόνοι τους να δούνε τι είναι αυτή η προσπάθεια, ποια είναι αυτά τα παιδιά, επιχειρήσεις. Και αυτή τη στιγμή, στο Βόλο ειδικά, σε αυτή την πόλη, είναι υποχρεωτικό η ομάδα να πάει και να προετοιμαστεί, γιατί έχουμε μεγάλες παροχές όσον αφορά τα γήπεδα, τις διανυκτερεύσεις, τις χορηγίες. Έχει δημιουργηθεί μια αλυσίδα ανθρώπων, είναι αλήθεια αυτό. Πραγματικά δεν ξέρω πώς κατάφερε αυτή η πόλη να φτιάξει αυτή την αλυσίδα. Νομίζω ότι είναι κάτι γενικότερο στην ανθρώπινη φύση. Όλοι θέλουν να βοηθήσουν όταν βλέπουν ότι μια προσπάθεια είναι καθαρή, είναι τίμια, είναι συνεχής, είναι αφοσιωμένη. Και νομίζω ότι αυτό που έκανε η ομάδα με τη συνεχή παρουσία της και τη συνεχή αγωνιστικότητά της ενέπνευσε τον κόσμο. Απ' την άλλη μεριά και η ομάδα πήρε πίσω πολλά πράγματα. Πήρε αγάπη, πήρε στοργή, πήρε φροντίδα, πήρε αναγνώριση. Οπότε όλες οι επιτυχίες, και δεν θα σταθώ μόνο στο Βόλο γιατί συνέβη και σε άλλες πόλεις και στην Αθήνα, όλες οι επιτυχίες της ομάδας νομίζω ότι σε ένα μεγάλο βαθμό οφείλονται στην ευαισθησία και στην τρυφερότητα που έδειξαν κάποιοι άνθρωποι απέναντι σε αυτά τα παιδιά.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Siddiqi, you mentioned something which is quite important for today's discussions, and this is soft diplomacy, something which we use in today's world and should be used more. Since we are talking about new world which is changing from day to day in regard of new technologies, social networks, all the new opportunities, how do you see this connection of soft diplomacy with the new technologies, innovative tools? What do you see that could be done in this regard? Is this lack of funds, or is this financial issues, or do we need some strategy in this regard? What is your experience?
I think every country, we have a big vision, obviously. We're all here because we all understand the power of sports. But we all also understand that sports isn't a magical wand, and we're not going to fix everything with sports. However, I think the key, what we have to look at is how we culminate and bring all of that together and look at the emerging threats that we face as humanity against isolation, against misunderstanding, and technological advances can almost be a negative in that aspect, especially in growing markets in third world countries, with children that are just kind of channeled with the wrong information. And I feel sport has got a huge contribution to make in that area of bringing those children out of isolation. But I think on the financial question, it's interesting that you asked, because the question that we always discuss, and as champions we always think, is why a lot of the money from governments is going to defense areas around the world, rather than being provided with contributions within sports. Because I think the financial aspect of where government policies really need lobbying is the budgets. Because I think whether it's technological advances, whether it's issues that we're facing within those countries or cities, the money which is being lobbied into, say, security, defense, if it's pulled into funds that, with obviously great causes like the Hope Refugee that was just shown, and the contribution they've made to so many people, and how can we kind of pull that? And I think that's an interesting debate to have in an audience like this, where everyone is very like-minded. And I know Peace and Sport will be hosting a forum today with sports ministers, etc. And I think these are the exact opportunities that we have to try and pull some of those answers to those questions.
Thank you for your answer. Mr. Kokkalis, we are talking about inclusion and importance of inclusion. And what you started to do back then was quite a challenge to formulate this kind of teams and this foundation and everything. How it went in regard of the local communities? How was the reaction of local communities? How was this first encounter of local people to these teams, and how did you make this connection, which is valuable?
Thank you. This is a very good question, because one of the problems of integration is precisely to invent ways of interaction, means of interaction. In my country, in Greece, we have refugees are accommodated in camps, mostly. Some of them are good, are okay. Some of them are terrible and should not, and shameful, and some are being moved by the United Nations High Commission for Refugees into apartments. So in my city, we host 250 people from 9 countries, and we work very closely with the local providers of culture and sport to open their arms and accept, especially the kids, in this, in what they do. For example, Olympiakos academies, Ethnikos academies, sailing clubs, so that they, but then how do you communicate? This is a problem that you don't, it's, the language barrier is difficult. So you have to be inventive and you have to focus, and I like very much your suggestion of moving the defense budget to such things. These are not very heavily funded. They are now, but still, even though there is a sincere effort to finance such effort, we don't always seem to find the proper ways to do it. Sometimes we have, for example, we were allowed to employ a theater specialist, but she didn't have an interpreter. So I'm sure theater is something that you can do without language, but it's probably better with language. I think it's something that we have to become more inventive and work more on that.
Just if I can add to that point,
yeah.
on what you're saying is, I think it's, obviously we know that defense budgets wouldn't be moved into it, but even if there was a minimal share,
absolutely,
that could be put into development agencies or NGOs or organizations that are working on the ground to build more resilient, more integrated communities, I think we could have a much better chance than we have today. But I guess it's how we collectively work together to try and lobby that. And that's obviously the burning question.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. But I just need to stress again that it's not only about the money, it's about simple ways. I mean, why is Hope Refugee the only team in Greece that's doing that? We never had a racist incident, we never had a bad mouthing. Whenever our team played, everybody was very happy to finally meet people on a people-to-people basis. So it's not, absolutely, money helps, but it's not just that.
I think, the soft power, the soft diplomacy is definitely a way forward, and I think that's a great example of that working.
And definitely one move, one action will not solve the problems. There is this combination of more actions that actually will have the concrete results always when you want to achieve change. Ms. Akhtar, this is the end round for my questions, and since we are answering some questions, but also trying to be inspiring for the rest of the stakeholders, how to act actually. At the beginning, it's always very hard. You mentioned stereotypes in the communities, how to involve young ladies to actually be part of these teams, how to deal with their families, stereotypes in regard to their parents, and etc. On the other hand, you had the challenges of having sports sometimes as exclusive, something which is very, like untouchable. What would be your advice to people who are starting, who are initiating something in overcoming these kind of challenges?
Yeah, as I said earlier on, the biggest thing in our experience was we were very almost stubborn about how we wanted to do things. We were very clear about what our girls wanted. So, just as any other business out there, it's about supply and demand. You have to supply what is being demanded. And what the girls were demanding was the sport should be provided in a certain way for them that catered to their culture and their religious sensitivities. And as soon as you provide that, people would come in their, droves. Lots of girls would turn up. And just to clarify, our focus was obviously Muslim women because we, as a community, are the sort of least inactive. I think in Sports England, which runs sort of the grassroots aspect of sport in England, in the last survey of activity, we were something like 7% of Muslim women participate at the recommended levels to keep healthy. So that really an issue. So for us, it was really important that we provided sport in the way that the women wanted it. And once we provided that, like I say, they came in their droves. The sports industry then saw that, this is actually working. And they thought, well, actually, we need to think a little bit more widely and more expansively in terms of how we provide sports. And on the community side of things, because we were stubborn about how we were doing things, because we knew exactly what the sensitivities were, it was just accepted. There were no issues, there were no arguments. It was all about what the girls want and what is in their best interest.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Since we want to have this panel interactive and inclusive as well, I think that we have a lot of food for thoughts and points for discussion, and I would now like to give the floor to participants to ask questions. Please, the floor is yours. We have a question lady over there, and next one, the man in the third row.
Thank you. Claire Burrell from UK Sport. I have a question for Rimla. On your opening slide, there was reference to the Muslim Women in Sport Network. And listening to you, I feel that the room has a lot more to learn. So I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about the network and what it does and what you're hoping to achieve with it. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Claire. So in the first slide, you would have seen that there was also mentioned the Muslim Women in Sport Network. That was a network that I co-founded with a good friend of mine in Australia, Asma Halal. And the two of us were really, as well as many of our colleagues actually and peers across the world, were very frustrated with this sort of mono-narrative around Muslim women in particular, that we behave in a certain way, we're repressed and all these kind of things. If I went into a whole talk, it's a whole separate talk to talk about the misconceptions and the mono-narrative around the Muslim community, but we were quite frustrated working in the sports industry as athletes, as advocates, as administrators, as journalists, etc. So we set up the network to own our own narrative, really, to promote Muslim women in sport and what we do and what we contribute from leadership and all those other areas that we contribute to sport. And actually, we talk about, this topic's about cities as a hub of innovation. What we did was our own kind of innovation. And earlier this year, in May of this year, we held the first ever virtual summit, which was focused on Muslim women's contributions in sport, all online, all across the world, about 6 different time zones. It was quite a challenge. But actually, the response to that has been fantastic from people across the world. We've had actually Peace and Sport awardees, such as Faduma Abdul Qadir, as part of that conference, and just the response from it has been wonderful. Going forward as a network, we're looking to continue telling our narrative ourselves and owning that narrative, and we'll just continue to grow from here.
Thank you. We had one question here, the man in the third row.
Thank you. My question is for Rimla again. Thank you. It's very impressive to hear your. My name is Nabil. I'm from Jordan, Basketball Federation of Jordan. it's impressive to hear your speech about inclusivity and what you showed in a slide that you described. However, you showed that you described it as an exclusive white community, the sports industry at large. And that sounds, although I understand your goodwill, but I don't think this was set by design at the beginning. Everyone is included in the sports movement all across the world. But don't you suggest that the name itself of your organization, Muslim Women in Sports, suggests some sort of exclusivity and seclusion? Don't you think that perhaps there's more to be done for the benefit of the women than just simply tailoring the sports industry to the culture, rather than trying to work on the culture to adapt the best form of the benefits for women in sports in general? And whether it is a class issue or a religion issue, that's another question for you.
Yeah, they're two very different questions, I think. Actually, the first one, as I said earlier on, whilst we were focused on Muslim women and the needs of Muslim women, actually all of our sessions were open to all women. So that's the first thing to clarify. I actually believe that we as an industry, or any industry, should not dictate to one individual or a community how they go about their work and how they live their lives. We knew we have something called a no excuses policy at the foundation. So what that policy meant was, if there's any reason that a woman will not take part in sport, we will get rid of it. We did not judge. We did not say that you have to adapt to what we want. We said we will deliver what you want, and people come to that. I think everyone should have their agency to decide how they want to live their lives, and that includes in the sports space. As an organization, there was a niche area that needed to be focused on because it was being excluded. The Muslim women's movement was being excluded from the sports space. And as you said, it wasn't by design, it's just how it began. So it's really important for me that, yes, the community have proven that they want to be part of the sports industry by coming in their droves, as I said. But the sports industry has also proven that it's willing to adapt, to adjust, adapt, to suit the needs of the people, to make sure that it is more widely inclusive. That's the opinion, that's the angle that I come from, whether I'm in the UK or whether I'm anywhere else in the world. For me, it's like any other business, as I said, you adapt to fit the needs and the demands of the people with which you're working, without any judgment.
Thank you for your answer. Do we have any more questions? Yes. Microphone. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Danny Hakim. I'm founder of Budo for Peace, which is basically martial arts for peace in Israel. We have in our organization ultra-Orthodox Jewish women that do capoeira. We have Palestinian women that do karate, and we also have regular secular women in Israel that do karate. Because the sports are different, it doesn't offer them to meet and practice together. However, in soccer, I wanted to know if you have competitions with other women groups, or it's just exclusive to Muslim women. That's my question.
Yes. Me as well, I think. No, as I said, it's not exclusive for Muslim women. So actually, one of the things that we did first up, the foundation was originally for the British Muslim women's teams that were going to compete abroad. But actually, what we did after I came back from the 2005 Women's Islamic Games, where we competed and where I was captain, I actually began a grassroots strategy. And that was about building the movement, as I say, of Muslim women in sports. And through that, part of the work that we did was we held our own tournaments and set up our own leagues across the country. And those were held in an environment that catered to the needs of the women that we were targeting, but it was open for absolutely everyone. So if you look on our website, actually you'll see a really diverse mix of people. Even the picture that I put up earlier on, you'll see it's a diverse mix of women. From all sorts of faith backgrounds, race backgrounds, etc. It is about being inclusive in the fullest sense. The only difference was it's just for women, and we make no bones about that, because that's the environment that these women wanted. So it was open to all women.
Thank you. Do I see any more hands to ask a question? Yes, I see few. Please, the microphone over here, the fifth row, I think, for the gentleman.
And I'm a scholar of sport and soft power, so my question is actually for Mr. Siddiqi. I was very interested in his presentation. And my question actually echoes something from the first session, which is you mentioned a couple of the events that your organization put on, which was quite interesting. But could you give us some examples of any sort of impact that those events or other work that your organization has put on in regards to diplomacy or soft power in sport, and any sort of evidential evidence like the other panelists have given in terms of those programs? Thank you.
For me, yeah?
Both of us.
Sorry, that question was for me, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. A good example is in 2015, His Royal Highness Prince Ali bin Hussein, under his patronage, we had a peace match which brought Afghanistan and Great Britain together. And we had this match on a hospital ship in the UK, which actually brought Afghanistan and Great Britain to play on the same team, and this was post the war. The messaging part around the game was around reconciliation. And this for us was our first stance in the world of football diplomacy, and a stamp towards soft power, and showing how Afghanistan, who's just come out of a war with, well, you could say Great Britain, US, or the issues that they faced, and how Afghanistan is now playing on the same team as Great Britain. We brought Wales, representatives from Wales, Scotland, and the UK to play on that team. And that's a perfect example of a land which Afghanistan quite rightly said in their statement that we're a land divided by borders. And this for us was the first showcase of sports diplomacy. On the back of that, we launched 2 programs, one in the UK and one in Kabul, making them both cities for peace. And coming back to the example of what we're discussing today, this was a showpiece of bringing young children together from divided communities and integrating them and taking them out of isolation using the tools of soft power and sports diplomacy. So I'm not sure if that answers your question as an example of impact.
I'm sure it is, yeah.
I think
so.
Was that okay?
Thank you, Kashif. If we don't have any more questions, I think that we are running out of the time, and I would like to thank panelists for your time and for your presentation and answers and inspirational words. I would like to thank organizers for having us this opportunity here today. Thank you very much.